Good afternoon, everyone. If we could just, if we can settle down and get ready to get started. Welcome to yet another Green Talk. My name is Barbara Murphy Wesley, and I am one of the 100W instructors. It is my pleasure to welcome back to San Jose State Mandeep Khera. He was here about 2 years ago to speak to our engineers in a Green Talk as a part of our Green Talk series. He has been in Silicon Valley for about 25 years, working in marketing, all different kinds of startups, and most recently was at Arcsand Marketing, and has been at Daintree. Is currently at a startup right now. So I'm going to let him fill you in on the rest of what he does. And what we'll do is continue with his talk. We'll have some Q&A, so don't leave right at the end. We're going to have some time for that. Just as a few housekeeping items, remember, please turn off your cell phones. And I'm going to turn the podium over to Mandeep. So please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Can everyone hear me okay in the back? Okay, perfect. So again, as Barbara mentioned, my name is Mandeep Khera. I've been in Silicon Valley for about 25 plus years in various roles, mostly in the software side, so software startups, but I was also with HP, so big companies. But in different roles, I've done marketing, I've done sales, I've done engineering, believe it or not, and I've been a CEO, I've been a general manager, and my original education was in accounting. So I was a CPA, so I've done pretty much everything. And the reason I'm sharing that is because don't get yourself in a box. You can always change careers, as you move forward, right? So keep your minds open and thoughts open, and you never know where the career leads you. So. How many of you are electrical engineering? So about 20%. How many mechanical? Another 20-25%. Industrial, small group. And rest of them are what?
Software.
Software, okay. How many in software? Okay, not that many, surprisingly. There was a loud noise, but only 4 people. How many people here love to write? Oh, great. Perfect talk. Okay, how many of you have heard the term Internet of Things? Oh, quite a few. Okay, so about almost 50-60%, which is great to see because, so IoT, for those of you who don't know or have not heard the term before, right, is becoming mainstream and is the future. So 2 years ago when I gave the talk here in 2015, about maybe 5% of the room knew what IoT was or even heard of it. So the number is growing, as you can tell from here. So for engineering, I'm telling you right now, guys, you got to go and really invest time in this because this is the future, and it's coming like gangbusters. I mean, it's going to be, according to some estimates, $17 trillion market by 2020. So everything will be touched by IoT, everything. And so today, obviously, our focus will be Internet of Things and how it's impacting the environment, but it has so many other implications. So I'll try to give you some, at a high level, the concepts of Internet of Things, what it means, and all of those things, so that'll help kind of define some of these things. I think most of you might think of Internet of Things as Fitbit talking to your iPhone, right? And that's that's kind of the IoT, but IoT has a lot more implications for the enterprise world. So let me kind of go through it. I'm supposed to stay in the spotlight. I like to move around, but I'll try to be as close to the light as possible. So as you can see, I mean, I don't need to explain these, but this year has been a disastrous year, right, from environment point of view. So the climate change, for skeptics out there, I won't name who, one at the top of the country. This is a living proof, right? I mean, and this is just the U.S., but you can see it all across the globe right now. So it's a major, major problem. Environment is the number one issue right now for not only for the U.S., but for the whole world, right? So all these disasters from Harvey to Irma to Napa and every place else, right? we need to change things, and IoT can help. So from agenda point of view, so I'll go through kind of definition of Internet of Things, how IoT is kind of at a high level making changes in different sectors, then go through impact on environmental issues and touching on some specific things where it can make a big difference, some of the risks and barriers in terms of why people are not adopting IoT as fast, future of IoT, and then hopefully we'll have about 10, 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. So if you guys can think of questions as I'm going through it. If you don't understand something, if I speed through something, just write it down, and we can address it in the Q&A section. So I want to kind of touch really quickly on writing, because since it's all about writing and 100W, and so even though my career has spanned a lot of different things, right? So software in various different roles, as I mentioned. Writing was my passion. And that's why I actually volunteered to speak before and now, because I've been writing. So I love to write, because writing plays such a critical role, and I think it's such a good an expression, that you can really express your things so clearly. So I've been writing for a long, long time, just on the side. It wasn't a part of my career, but then it ended up, every role I was in, I ended up writing for that company as well on the side. So I've written a book called Why. I'm not plugging it. I'm just trying to tell you that it's out there, and I wrote it as it was a passion. It's not about a business book. It's a more spiritual book, meaning of life and all that stuff. Plus, I've been a contributing editor for a number of different publications, again on the side, while I'm doing my full-time job. So usually it's the weekend and night things, but it's been a fun thing for me. So I would encourage all of you to not discount writing and have more passion around it. I think technical writing can get boring, but I think you can go beyond that once you start with that. So it plays a pretty critical role in every business, whether it's software or hardware type of business. So what is the Internet of Things, right? So a lot of people have different notions. So this is kind of what some people associate Internet of Things, right? When you're walking on the phone and the street sign says, hey, look up, you're about to hit me. So that could be Internet of Things, but that's kind of the fluffy Internet of Things, right? It's not really value add too much. So what is really the definition of Internet of Things? So it's machine to machine, right? So it's identifiable physical objects that have embedded technology in them. So it's devices, sensors, computers, phones that are talking to each other and communicating to get you to operational efficiencies and other types of savings as well. So that is the ultimate. So think of it machine to machine, and then I think you'll get the picture. So everything, and whether it's you're at home, it's your coffee machine talking to your alarm clock. So when the alarm clock goes off at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m., which I know for college students is too early, so maybe 10 a.m., and then the coffee machine turns on automatically, the refrigerator turns on, those types of things, that's all machine to machine, right? And that's already here, and it's happening real time. So brief history of IoT. So let's look at kind of brief history of IT or Internet, right? Does anyone know who this gentleman is? British dude? Yeah. Okay. What's his name? What did he do? Who's speaking? Sorry, I can't see. Oh, sorry, I'm looking back there. Yeah, exactly. No, you're right. So it's Tim Berners-Lee. Tim Berners-Lee, he's really the inventor of internet browser, right? World Wide Web, 1990, he's the guy who created. Before that, internet was around, more HTTP and being used by ARPANET and all these other government agencies. And people who knew how to use it, they would go in the system and figure out how to use it, until he came up with the World Wide Browser in 1990. And then everything exploded after that. So at that time, in 1984, before the World Wide Web came along, there were only 1,000 devices that were connected. So between 1990 and 2000, if you think about it, Amazon, eBay, and Google have not been around for that long. I mean, these guys have become humongous companies now, right? I mean, it's like Amazon has started with bookstore and now selling groceries and Whole Foods and all kinds of stuff, right? Clothing, you can buy everything on Amazon. So they haven't been around for that long, and what has accelerated them is internet, right? Is the browser and access and easy to do transactions. And IoT will make it even much, much faster on the growth. You probably guys don't know who this guy is, right? Anyone recognize him? No, probably not. So he actually originally is supposed to have come up with the term Internet of Things. His name is Kevin Ashton. So back in 1999, he used to work for Procter & Gamble. So he originally presented a paper on RFID and how RFID can help make big difference in the machines and operational efficiencies. And he called it the Internet of Things. And that's kind of how it started. But officially, it didn't really become an official term until Cisco came up with it in really 2008, 2009 timeframe when it became truly Internet of Things. So again, it's a fairly new technology still in a few years, and it hasn't gone mainstream, but it's moving very rapidly. And last I heard, it was 10 billion was the number that's being thrown around that are connected devices today, 10 billion. And it's supposed to go to anywhere from 30 to 50 billion by 2020. That's a lot of devices connected, talking to each other. And, again, both on the consumer side, industrial side, manufacturing side, everywhere. So again, when we looked at a couple of years ago, a lot of people still don't know what it means. People have heard of it, but they don't quite relate to it. And that number is starting to change. It's going up now slowly, but it's still a long ways to go. And again, when we talked, this is from a couple of years ago as well, we said, are you familiar with IoT? 43% were familiar, 57% not. Now that number is changing. I think it'll be the other way around. But again, still probably 40 to 50% people don't know what that means. So I know this is an eye chart, but the idea is, so this is basically all the sectors that IoT is covering, right? So since you can't probably read it clearly, but so buildings, energy, consumer and home, healthcare, industrial, transportation, retail, security, and service sectors. Everything is being touched by IoT. And then there are products, there are services, there's hardware, there's sensors, there's devices. If you count all these things together, it's already a $1 trillion market. And more people are getting into it. So again, this will keep growing. So from engineering students' point of view and your career point of view, focus on it, do a course on it. This will be a sellable skill set that you guys can use in careers. I can guarantee you that. So IoT impact on environment, right? So there are really 5 different areas. I mean, there are other things that we can talk about, but 5 key areas. So environmental sensors, smart farming, preservation, CO2 emissions, and energy efficiencies that are being hugely impacted by IoT. And I'll go through each one of these to kind of share. So environmental sensors, right? So what can you do with it? So there are a lot of pocket sensors that people are walking around with, wrist. You can have things at home that are sensing air quality, so they can tell you the kind of the carbon CO2 levels, pollens, those types of things. You can check for water quality. Is it drinkable? Does it have the right pH balance? Radiation, which in some areas could be very important. Chemicals in the air, right, and a lot of different ones. So these are different. I've kind of put some samples down there just to share what's going out there. First one is called the WaterBot, which basically, I think it was the AirBot, that came out of Carnegie Mellon. Second one was WaterBot, came out of Carnegie Mellon as well. And the third one, I'm forgetting the name. Let me see if I have it. It's called LAPCA, which is for radiation. The one after that is it's a wrist sensor that kind of tells you the air pollen as you're walking around and pollution in the air. And the last one is called the air quality egg, which is not a pocket sensor. You can put it in your house and it'll detect the quality of the air and things like that. So that's just few examples, but there are hundreds and hundreds of sensors like this that are really helping in determining the quality pretty quickly. So smart farming, it's again a huge impact from IoT. So smart irrigation, so when to water, right? when to turn it off, what frequency, what level, all of that. It's all automated through sensors now, and you can remotely control it. You could be sitting in India or China and control farms here, or vice versa, just over the web. It's all about Internet of Things. You can monitor your livestock, sensors on animals, cows, buffaloes, whatever, and you can track them. You can even track their feeding. Sensor-based precision agriculture. So again, what types of farm to grow, when, what types of periods. And then remote monitoring as well in terms of quality of soil. All of this can be done remotely, right? So if you have proper Internet of Things types of sensors and infrastructure in place. And this infrastructure is not very expensive. I mean, these sensors are not getting so cheap. I remember when I was in the IoT for the building side, those sensors used to cost maybe $50 when we started. It went down to like less than $1 within a few years. So as the volume keeps going up, the price keeps going down, and the frequency is going up as well. So this is kind of from Harvard Business Review. So you can see the different aspects of farming, right? So you can do monitoring, so sensors and external data sources. So you can do the monitoring of products condition, external environment, operation and usage. You can do the control. So again, software embedded in the product that helps you with controlling of product functions. Optimization, you can again monitor and control and change things to optimize all the tools that you have for farming. And then, of course, combining all of that to make it an autonomous product operation. I had I think a video somewhere, but we won't use that. But you can see the savings on top, right? So it's 1.6 gigaton of carbon emissions just from optimizing the agriculture. It's huge. I thought you'll get attention. You'll pay attention after this one. So who would have thought, right? So cannabis, now that it's legal and there's a lot of farming going on, IoT is playing a big role in cannabis farming and actually making a huge impact. So, this is a solar-powered Wi-Fi connected garden sensor that's streaming data. So it enables growers to breed plants remotely with predictable outcomes, and they can actually control everything remotely, right? This device is called Psych Inhaler. It's an Israeli company. It's an internet-connected marijuana dispenser developed in Israel where you can get the dosing. So it's mainly for medical, right? So that one. So it's basically the doctor can use it to give the exact dose depending on the patient. So some really good use coming out of all of this. So I figured I'll get your attention with this. So preservation. So do you know what kind of animal is this? What was it? Lynx. Yeah, very good. You know your lynxes. So this is a story about the Iberian lynx. So in Spain, so it was pretty much extinct. I think they had gone down to less than 100 in that area. So it was a major problem. So they were trying to fix it, and they're very shy animals. So any kind of human interface is not good. So they ended up using IoT by using location collars with georeferences. And with that, they can study the behavioral, they can see their eating time, all of that. And then they have connected drones that are keeping track of it, and all of those are connected. So now, because of that, the population has gone up to, I think, over 300 or something. So it's growing, and so, and you can use this in any kind of preservation of animals, right? So it's pretty cool. I mean, it's no one would have thought of this as an IoT thing, about 3-4 years ago. So people are coming up with new ways to kind of leverage Internet of Things in the environment. So CO2 emissions. So obviously it's a huge issue, and as you can see, the rate is not going down in spite of the Paris Climate Act and all the commitments made by all the different countries around the world, China, India, US. Everyone has made commitment to reduce CO2 emissions, but as you can see, it's not going down. It's continuing to flatten, which is not a good thing because we are at an alarming rate of the CO2 emissions. It's a big problem, but IoT can help. But here's the irony, right? So IT actually causes CO2. So 3.2 billion people are online, right, with 20 to 50 billion devices by 2020. That actually increases CO2. A single tweet can cause 0.02 gram of CO2. So 500 million tweets a day, 10 metric tons of CO2 every day from Twitter. Half of that is probably President Trump. So it's a huge problem, right? But people don't realize that. I mean, but you have to keep on going with the technology. And the entire internet, nearly 1 billion tons of annual CO2 and rising from the internet because of all the usage of computers and electricity and all of that, right? So ultimately it boils down to how are we generating power. It's all coming from, still, most of it is coming from coal. But the irony is, again, IT also reduces CO2 with IoT. So IoT enables smart grids. They're saving about 2.0 gigatons of CO2. And then, of course, by improving energy efficiency, you can save another 1.9 gigatons in transportation. So it's a kind of a yin-yang. It's a balancing act. But IoT is definitely, if IoT wasn't there, right, if we just had internet and information technology, we would continue to have more and more CO2 emissions. But with Internet of Things, now it's helping counterbalance that and actually reducing a lot of emissions. So did you know this, that you can reduce energy consumption by 70% in commercial buildings? Did you know this? How many of you knew this? Okay, one person knew it. How?
Okay, I know you can reduce energy consumption by you can use a lot of ways. You can optimize things like multi-zoning in buildings.
Yeah.
You can also have it so I think this is press for Karen White House or something. Did a lot of research, and that a lot of the energy we don't use. Like for example, if you walk out of a room for a long time, why should you have the lights on?
Yep.
So you can have it so it learns how it's going your patterns. You can optimize your energy around that pattern.
Yeah, absolutely. So good answer. So it's based on, I don't know if you heard in the back, but it's obviously you can zone different areas within houses and also within commercial, of course. And then occupancy based, right? So, and that's the simplest way of controlling energy. You know, if this room is not occupied, do the lights stay on? And why? You know, it doesn't make any sense. But believe it or not, it's very, very common. I mean, in commercial, it's horrible. I mean, in houses, you know, obviously people leave lights on, AC on, and who cares? In hotels, most of us, I think, when you leave the room, a lot of people leave TV on, lights on, right? So hotels have started now controlling that. I don't know if you've been into rooms where they have those controlling cards where you have to it's in your room key. So when you take the room key out from that slot, everything turns off when you leave the room, right? So a lot of hotels are trying that because people don't, people say it's not my cost, right? I'm just here and I've already paid for the room. I don't give a damn. I'll just leave and everything is on. But it's energy consumption. It's impacting the environment, right? So we got to think like that. Every single one of us needs to start thinking like that. Otherwise, it's not going to change. So all those things. So hotels, houses, commercial buildings, warehouses. I mean, I've seen so much inefficiency in warehouses when we were selling into the warehouse market. All these guys had all the lights on all the time, and huge. Or the old what were they called? The fluorescent lamps before LED, right? So, and even though LED has been around for a while, they're still using those old lamps that are consuming. I mean, they just keep consuming energy. So we used to go to them and say, "We'll give you the product for free. Just share whatever you save the savings. You share half of that, right?" What a deal. And then they started taking us up on it. And the PG&E and all these guys are giving so much rebate, and people are still not doing enough. I mean, it's like there are programs now, it's called Net Zero, where PG&E actually gives you full rebate. So you buy the software from us, for example, or from any company, you put it in place, and you have energy savings. All the cost of the products, software and hardware, will be paid by PG&E as a rebate. I mean, it's like a no-brainer. And so there are a lot of rebates out there, especially in California and Massachusetts. A lot of things are happening there, but middle America, probably not as much. So that's why you're still seeing a lot of discrepancies as to who's using this. So it's pretty interesting. So, but you know, you can do this just by, you can reduce millions of metric tons of carbon emissions just with technology, and that's today. I mean, it's mature, it's available, it's not as expensive, but people either don't know about it, don't care about it, or, you know, just inertia, right? They know they'll get to that project at some point, and they're not doing enough. So, in fact, one of the initiatives I was trying to launch when I was in that space was to work with the government to actually offer tax credits. So I started talking to some congressmen and start, you know, working on a law that says, or tax rebate act, which says if you use an energy efficiency software within a commercial enterprise, that the government IRS will give you corporate tax credit, significant tax credit, right? So we were looking at that. I mean, so there are a lot of things that can be done because this is a low-hanging fruit. I mean, everyone, I don't know if San Jose State has this, but San Jose State should be doing it. We actually had sold it to Stanford and a few other universities. MIT, Harvard was using it. So every university should be, because there's a lot of energy being used in San Jose State, right? Labs and classrooms and auditoriums and all kinds of stuff. So you guys can have a lot of savings just by using simple tools. So energy consumption, you can see it's huge, 10.2 quadrillion BTU. And the worst part is only 10% is renewable from that. So the rest of it is petroleum, natural gas, coal, nuclear electric power, which is not good. And if you look at the U.S. share of it, right? So USA, and the chart shows you by population and energy consumption, so you can compare, right? So China and India have huge populations, but the energy consumption is comparable, or in India's case, half of it. But in US's case, we're consuming so much more, right, than our population. So we're like hogs and so is the Russian Federation of energy. I mean, we use energy in everything, and we love to use it. But it's causing all kinds of problems. And that's where eventually it impacts the global climate change. So some of the smart building, have you guys heard of the smart buildings? Yes. That's good. So smart buildings is basically, again, it's using technology in buildings to focus on lighting controls, thermostat controls, and other energy controls to reduce the energy consumption, right? And those are called smart buildings. They're smart cities. So smart cities basically take the concept of smart buildings and it goes beyond that. So it includes transportation. So what kind of cars you're using, what kind of buses, what kind of public transportation. All of those things fall in smart cities. So San Diego, for example, has done a lot of stuff in the last 2-3 years as a smart city. Palo Alto has been doing stuff. San Francisco has been doing things, right? So a lot of cities are now taking actions to become smart cities because that will help energy in reducing energy consumption. So like I said, up to 70% in energy savings. Again, this is from lighting, thermostat controls, so occupancy, but also things like do you really need 100%? So if you install LED lights, right? So LED is all controlled by software. LED is all about technology. So if you can reduce the LED by 70%, you still fine. The light is so bright that you'll still be fine. So you don't need 100%. So now all of a sudden, instead of using 100-watt, what used to be 100-watt fluorescent bulb, you're using like 10-watt equivalent of energy. So it's a dramatic difference. Same thing with thermostat. If you can control automatic controls of where people are. So in this room, when you guys came in, if you're able to detect the temperature, and the temperature just based on the occupancy, and then when everyone leaves, it turns off, is brilliant. It's all technology, and no one has to go and turn the switches off or on, right? It's all going to happen automatically. And that's what's going to result in savings. So occupant comfort, so this is a side benefit of all of this because there's been a lot of studies done that lighting and what kind of lighting you use for working, for studying, for your school, for example, makes a huge difference in your productivity. I mean, it can make like about 10 to 25% improvement in productivity if you use the right lighting. So that's why a lot of people are switching to LED lights, because there's a whole color combination and what kind of lights are coming out that you can actually adjust based on your own preferences. And so when you're installing technology there, you can actually control at individual level, individual desk level in the classes, individual desk level in the offices. So you can, programmers, I mean, those of you who are doing software here, programmers generally don't like lights, right? They like to cover themselves. And I mean, I've even seen in offices umbrellas, to block the light off. So the new technology actually offers this control at individual light level, just from software. And you're controlling it remotely. I mean, I used to joke because I had controls in my phone. And sometimes when I was doing the demo for my customers, I would say, I can turn my CEO's office light off right now, and I did. And I said, pretty soon I'll get a call, what's going on, And literally there's that level of control. It's in your hand, right? So you can say, worldwide, I have these buildings, these offices, I can control the light level, I can program it, I can do it manually. All of that is that simple. It's just amazing stuff. You can also do fault detection and diagnostics, and there are a lot of compliance issues coming up, right? So, like in California, there's SB 1386, which was a regulation. So California is obviously, as always, number one in these things, right? So they passed a law, I think it's been 4, 5, 6 years ago. So it was called SB 1386, Senate Bill 1386, that actually forces companies to go into energy efficiency. So, for example, all new buildings now, over the last few years, they have to have things like plug loads. Does anyone know what plug load is? So plug load controller, what you do is, so when you guys have a lot of copiers and printers here, right, in the university? So what happens is in a lot of times you guys just leave and those printers and copiers are on and consuming energy, right? So that's one thing. But a lot of times people think, I'll just turn it off and it won't consume energy. That's wrong, right? Because what happens is it actually never turns it off completely. So it's consuming energy. And I was dealing with New York University. They were one of my customers. And I went and visited their rooms, and it was like all these huge printers were like, consuming energy. And they're like, no, but we turn it off. And I'm like, let me show you how much energy it's consuming. So plug loads, what plug loads do is you basically, it looks like a plug. You just plug it into the regular outlet, and then you plug the machines in there. So when you turn it off, it actually cuts it off completely, right? So that's mandatory now in commercial buildings. So, and SB 1386 is actually doing a lot of that thing. So California is driving a lot of the compliance. And people who don't want to listen to savings and those types of things, compliance always works. Because, as soon as the stick comes, so you have the carrot piece, hey, you can save 70% energy, you can have rebates. If that doesn't work, then the stick is basically compliance. Then people start paying attention because now their jobs are on the line. So those things are helping. But again, it's only California and New York and Massachusetts. The rest of the states, it's like so far behind right now, it's scary. So this is just an example of what kinds of innovations are going on, right? So the lights that go up on LED lights in the office buildings, or even, I don't know, you don't have any here, but in the classrooms you might see these LED lights, right? That they look like tubes, but they are essentially LED chips. So what's happening now is that you can actually embed a lot of these, like LG has Zigbee embedded into the lights, right? And everyone is doing that now. Lutron and all these guys, all the big lighting manufacturers, GE, they're all embedding wireless technology into the lights themselves. So when they ship them, it's already ready to go and already connected. So talk about like proactive embedded technology, right? So now all they have to do is use any kind of software that's compatible, and now they can start controlling their lights. So that has saved a lot of money for people because they don't have to install a separate thing into lights to implement this. It comes with package. You just install it, ready to go. And that's happening in the house market. So if you go to Home Depot or any other places, when you're looking for bulbs, you'll see these bulbs that it'll say Wi-Fi connected, or you can connect it to iPhone for control. That's basically what this is. At the consumer level, they made it even easier. You just take the bulb, put it in, you can control it with your iPhone app, you can dim it, you can program it, so it can automatically turn off. It's becoming really, really super easy. So what are some of the barriers, right? So security is a big issue, and I've spent about a dozen years in security, a few years in IoT, and then some in big data. So all those things are coming together, and security is a big issue in IoT because what if the hackers attack you, right? Hackers, as you know, everyone has heard of Equifax breach recently, and that is, for software programmers, it's so easy to hack that, I've spent enough time with hackers and trying to protect enterprises. It's very easy to hack into computers, right? Into web applications, into networks, and all of that. So IoT, the big issue is there were a couple of big attacks, Mirai, that happened a few months ago, that caused major problem. It brought the whole infrastructure down for a lot of companies. That's just one symptom. But think about this. So some of the things that I've not talked about with IoT, right? So connected devices, the two big sectors that are really benefiting from is connected medical and connected automobiles, right? Connected medical is pacemakers, insulin pumps, and those types of things. Connected automobile, right? So you can automatically open your car, driverless cars, all these things are happening. Well, guess what? Hackers know that too, right? And hackers actually have been able to hack into those devices. So pacemakers, for example, if you have a heart patient and if you have a pacemaker installed, what if a hacker installs a ransomware, a malware, and basically says, if you don't pay me $10,000, I might turn your pacemaker off. So I don't know if you remember Dick Cheney. Do people remember Dick Cheney, who was the vice president, the famous guy, right? So when he had a heart problem recently, he refused to have a connected pacemaker because he was afraid that hackers will attack him, right? Which was probably true in his case. So he refused to install the connected device because he said, I want disconnected pacemaker. It's a very, very common issue. And insulin pumps have been hacked in the last 6 months. Connected automobiles, so researchers actually, there were a couple of researchers who hacked the Jeep software and applied the brakes, and they were doing it as a test, so there wasn't like a full malicious hack. Everyone was in control, but they applied brakes when the Jeep was going at 60 miles an hour, and showing just how easy it is to hack. And it's still not done. I mean, so Ford and Chrysler are using some software to protect themselves, but most of them are not. So security continues to be a big issue. So it's not just about the impact on the environment. What if they can hack into it? What if they can hack into a bank building and turn the lights off? So that's a big issue, and that's one of the reasons why not everyone is jumping on it yet. So I think that needs to be fixed. Privacy is another issue, right? So Google, obviously, home automation, a lot of people are using Google devices, right? So the big issue is, what information is Google collecting, right? And what are they going to do with it? And Google says, nothing, we're just maintaining it. That's BS, right? I mean, it's like at some point they're going to use that information for something. And most users know that. Similarly, Amazon Echo. Anyone using Echo here? A couple of people, few people. So here's the thing with Echo, right? So you haven't bought it because of this security and privacy issue, because we've learned that device is constantly listening. So the reason it listens to your command is because it's constantly listening, right? It says, show me the best Beatles song or whatever, right? So when it's constantly listening, it means it's constantly listening to everything that's going on in the room. And God knows what's going on in the room, right? So if a hacker gets into it, what do you think they're going to do, right? From anywhere from ransomware to all kinds of problems. So huge privacy issue, security issue, and until that's fixed, I'm not buying that. So, and then awareness is obviously a big issue that I think we're still trying to work on. So future of IoT. So like I said, anywhere from 25 to 50 billion is the average right now of number of connected devices by 2020. So this is 2017. So really 3 years from now. It's not that far out. $6 trillion will be spent on IoT solutions over the next 5 years. Hackers will continue to use IoT devices, as I mentioned, not only denial of service attacks, but actually getting into the devices to cause damage. So there are two types of hackers, right? So one is that's doing it for ransomware. So they'll want to blackmail you and get money from you, which is becoming very common now. And the second type is cyber terrorism. So I've been talking about cyber terrorism for 10 years now. And I don't think as a country, I don't think we take it seriously enough because to me, the physical wars are going to be tougher. Not as many people are willing to risk that. But cyber wars are happening real time right now on both sides. So we're not totally innocent party either. I mean, so NSA and CIA and all these guys are actually launching attacks on other countries all the time. I mean, we have hackers working on our payroll who are going into other countries' infrastructure and trying to steal information. And that's how we're finding a lot of these other type of attacks, right? So, but other countries, China, Iran, Russia, I mean, what happened with the elections, they're constantly trying to attack us. So that's a big, big issue. And so cyber terrorism, I think, it's coming. I mean, it's just, there'll be a big, big attack in the next 18 months, guaranteed. More cities will become smart, as I mentioned, and then, of course, dramatic improvement in environment by leveraging IoT devices, and I think you'll start to see more and more of that. So again, all over the country, countries are completely missing their emission targets. And I always tell people, look, do it for energy savings for sure, and tax rebates and all of these things. But more importantly, do it for the planet, because like Ban Ki-moon said, who was the Secretary General before, there is no plan B for action as there is no planet B. So we got to do it now. So with that, thank you, and I'll take questions.
Okay, we're going to answer a few questions here.
Hello. What's the relationship with CMT, I think it's the acronym, and IoT? They sound similar.
Say that again.
I think CMT.
CMC.
CMT.
CMC, I'm not sure.
I think it's, I think it's ICT, Internet Communication or something.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that term. It's called CMC.
If you Google IoT,
yeah,
it comes up with it too.
CMC.
CMT or something like that.
I'm not familiar with it, sorry.
To me, I'll ask.
Yeah, please, yeah. If you want to search and ask me, that's fine.
Hi, Mr. Khera. Thank you for your presentation. We really appreciated it. So my question for you is in relation to security. I know you touched on it a little bit, but with the rise of IoT devices in our society, they're becoming an increasingly popular target for cyber attacks. And it's been revealed that many companies are hard-coding weak administrator passwords in their devices that are not unique to their devices.
Yeah.
And they're very slow to offer security patches if they even do at all. In light of this and the recent crack Wi-Fi security vulnerability that was revealed earlier this week, how are manufacturers and consumers expected to put their trust in IoT devices and implement them in their lives?
Yeah, that's a really good, I don't know, did everyone hear the question in the back? Basically, with all the attacks that are happening, how can customers and companies trust and have confidence in IoT devices? And that's a problem, right? And it is a big challenge. And I think that's why I listed that as a barrier, because that's why a lot of companies are slowing down and saying, hey, can we afford to take this risk? Because they are not secure. And I can tell you, the password piece is the simplest thing to fix, right? I mean, it's like, come on, you're leaving your admin password, or, I mean, majority of people are still using password as their password. Come on, I mean, it's like, this is 2017, get with it. But people just don't know or lazy. You got to have very, very strong passwords. And that's like the lowest bar of security, right? But beyond that is the network security. So if you look at the IoT infrastructure at a very, very high level, like 100,000-foot level. So what are the different pieces of IoT, right? So there are endpoints. So there are sensors and devices. So sensors and devices can go on the lighting or any machinery in the manufacturing or agriculture equipment. Then you have a gateway, right, in between. So gateway is basically taking the command from software and giving it to all the devices. So gateway is saying, hey, what do you want me to do? The software says, turn it off when there's nobody there. And then it tells the sensor, turn it off, right? So majority of the IoT infrastructure are very similar. So you have the endpoints, you have the gateway, and then you have the back end, the software, which is sitting in a cloud, right? So there are security issues in all of those. So communication between the server and the gateway and the devices, and then each of those components themselves, they're all mostly insecure right now. So it's a major, major problem. So I think the trust and confidence will only come when we start holding people responsible. So right now, if there's a breach, who's responsible, right? Is it the company that's using the IoT, or is it the manufacturer? So today, we hold the companies responsible because, like, for example, the Equifax guy, right, the CEO got fired because the stock market, basically their stock crashed by like 10 or 15%. So they're saying, hey, you should have taken care of this, right? You should have invested more money in securing it. But maybe they did use some software that didn't work, right? So who's responsible? So I think until that ownership shifts, so where the manufacturers of devices and software are equally responsible as the companies, I think that we have a long way to go, and I think the trust and confidence won't be there. So that's why people will use it at their own risk, or look for, they'll do it for less critical things. So like, for example, lighting control and thermostat control. My point was, okay, so hackers can hack into it and turn the lights off. Big deal. It's like, go with it, right? I mean, it's like, what are they going to do? Except in case of banks, they might turn the lights off and then cause some havoc and then try to steal money. But otherwise, relatively speaking, it's not that big a risk. But if you're using it in, like I said, connected medical or connected automobile, it's a huge risk. And that's why some of these companies are, they paid us millions of dollars to secure their infrastructure. So it'll take a while. So the question is valid, and I think it will take a while to get full trust and confidence. Any other questions? Yeah, there's one over there. You can speak up or...
So on your slide about Internet of Things and farming, you mentioned precision agriculture. Mm-hmm. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, so precision agriculture means what types of farming do you want to have at what time, what season, right? And exactly in what spots even. So you can have, for example, have sensors, you can have water control, all of those. So it's all about getting so precise in terms of farming that the right types of plants, the right types of conditions, that you get the maximum output in terms of the farming piece. So that's what that means basically. And you can, of course, vary that by combining other technologies as part of that.
By the way, it's ICT, it's Information Communication Technology.
Oh, ICT, okay.
Related, right?
What's that?
It's related, right?
I'm not sure how, but I'm sure at some point in the back end it's probably connected, but I'm not sure how.
Do we have any more questions?
Oh, there's one more.
Okay.
So for example, like Siri, so you said that like a lot of these IoT are like listening to like the things we say, like Echo, Amazon's Echo and stuff like that. Would simply turning off Siri prevent them from hearing in on like your conversations and stuff like that? Could you like, because I know for Siri you can turn it off, but for like Echo, are you able to like just shut it off so that it can't hear you, or?
Can you turn it off? Well, you'll have to turn it off, but then it loses the effectiveness, right? Because the whole point of Echo is that you can be giving a command and it'll tell you the answer, right? So if you turn it off, then obviously then you have to go turn it on, and now you have to say something. You can do that, but it makes it, most people don't like to use it that way. So, a lot of them have it in different rooms. So you're just walking and say, play Beatles, and it starts playing it. So it'll make it very inconvenient if you turn it off and then you have to turn it on again.
So if I turned off Siri, would it be able to still hear it? Like, would Apple still be able to hear it on what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, then it won't, obviously, it's not listening to you then in that case, yeah. Any more questions? Yeah, there's one question here in the front.
So currently for IoT, how is data protected once it's going through? Are the signals set as specific frequencies that are unique, or are the packets being encrypted before being sent, or a mixture of things?
Yeah, so it depends on the infrastructure and how people are investing in security. So some solutions have encryption between the devices and the gateway and the back end, but some of them don't. And I think that's where companies need to put more pressure on manufacturers and say, hey, is the security built in? Or do I need to buy another encryption package to make sure that it's encrypted, right? And sometimes there are different levels of encryption. They'll do it bare minimum, but not too strong, which hackers can get into. Right. So it's yeah. But encryption, they're starting to make some more devices with encryption now, but it's not perfect.
In that regard, can you change the embedded software from the manufacturer into a different, better encryption system or different, more efficient code?
No. So can you put the different software? No. So you can't change really the embedded software. It'll be too big of an investment because you want the manufacturer to provide you updates on a regular basis, right? But you can add a layer of security on top of it. So, for example, if out-of-the-box software solution or embedded solution has some security, but then you can buy an external third-party software, and then they'll give you additional layers.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
It looks like that's all we have for today. So let's give Mandeep another hand.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for your good questions.